I'm going to talk a little bit about stitch length today. I've noticed a lot of people having issues with feeding, issues with stitching, and a lot of that's attributed to stitch length. A lot of machines nowadays come with the default stitch length. This one's set on 2.5. Some machines are set on 2.0. What that is that's in millimeters. And then the older machines are set sometimes in inches. It's between 4 and 60. That means 4 and 60 stitches per inch. That's how the older machines are set. But the more modern machines, a lot of the default setting is 2.5. Now, with that small of a stitch, that's really more for very fine fabrics like taffeta, fine lace. Even then, I don't know if I recommend 2.0 or 2.5 stitch, just because it buckles the fabric. And what happens is when you use too small of a stitch, it bunches the fabric, and then it will get sucked down into the throat plate. It's the same concept in embroidery. When you have a piece of stabilizer hooped in embroidery, if this is not tight, what happens is it just gets sucked right down into the throat plate, and it interferes with the bobbin case, and it just causes thread nesting. It causes a mess. A lot of times with machines, you also want to make sure, if you're having to like pull and try to push the fabric through, that's also going to cause looping on the bobbin case. So you want to make sure you don't pull on the fabric. If you're finding you have to pull on the fabric, you really need to increase your stitch length. So this is actually a piece of duck. It's a woven 100% cotton material. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the default 2.5 stitch and show you. Actually, let me do the 2.0 stitch and just show you. That's our 2.0 stitch. So as you can see, the stitch doesn't look 100% beautiful. I mean, this machine does have a great straight stitch, but it's just, it's a little wobbly. It means the feed dogs were moving an awful lot on this stitch. So let's go to 2.5. We do a 2.5 stitch. And again, you want to use a longer stitch for the thicker fabrics. And increase your stitch length. Okay, so this is our 2.5 stitch, which isn't bad. Some machines do it really tight, especially if you're going through multiple layers. You really want to have your stitch length up a little bit. 3.5, I recommend 3.5 for a standard seam. Sometimes 4 to 4.5 depending on, for a top stitch. And again, this is all depending on the machine. Some machines do tighter stitching. Alright, so that's 2.5. This is going to be 3.0. And again, type of fabric, stitch length, all helps determine your tension as well, how it shows up on your fabric. So that's a 3.0, which isn't bad. And we're going to go up 1 to 3.5. Okay, we'll look at our 3.5 stitch. Alright, that's our 3.5. So anywhere on this machine, I'd say 3 to 3.5 for a seam stitch. Usually if you're doing a seam, you probably want to go with a 3. Some machines do it tighter, so you might have to increase. For top stitching, I would do a 4 or 4.5. That usually makes a really beautiful top stitch. So let's go to 4.0 here. And of course, if I was doing multiple layers when top stitching, I might actually increase this. So that's actually a really pretty top stitch. I'll probably, since this is actually going to be folded into multiple layers, I'll probably do 4.5 for my top stitch. Go, here's a 4.5. You can see how nice this is going to look. Yeah, and see that makes a nice top stitch there. 4.5. So that's what probably I'd use for top stitching, especially with multiple layers. So there you go, there's your different stitches. Again, you know, you use too small of a stitch length, it's going on, you know, woven fabric, it's going to suck that right into your throat plate. In fact, on some machines they do come with different interchangeable, or you can get different interchangeable throat plates. This one is made for all kinds of different stitches because it's wide and different needle positions. If you're just doing a straight stitch, they actually have specialty straight stitch throat plates with a tiny little hole in the center that keeps your fabric from getting sucked in when you're doing a lot of straight stitching. I'm going to show you the top stitch on an actual multi-layer. Pull that out, and hopefully you can see the nice beautiful top stitch there.